Hi, I'm Krutika, and today's conversation is with my fantastic friend Jaymini Patel. She is, in every sense of the word, a very successful woman, an accountant, a homeowner, and a business owner. Yet her barometer of success isn't dictated by her pay, her material possessions, or her business performance. Instead, she offers a refreshing perspective on what it really means to live a fulfilled life, one that will resonate with so many of you. We also dive into her journey of being Indian, single, and nearly 40, along with all the pressures and stigma that this carries. I am truly in awe by the resilience and self-assurance that Jaymini embodies. And this conversation is a reminder of the beauty of navigating life without conforming to pressures. Really excited to be joined today by my friend. How are you today, Jaymini?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. In a cold office room, but yeah, no, it's a good weekend.
I know, I hear you. It is miserable outside. I think is it Storm Ewan? One of those storms going on, and it is pretty minging. But I'm happy to be recording with you. I mean, have you ever done anything like this before?
No, never been on a podcast. No, I have loads of Zoom calls, lots of conference calls because of work, but no, never a podcast.
Okay, well, I'll try to make this as enjoyable as possible.
No, it's just a conversation.
It is just a conversation, exactly that.
Exactly.
Now, obviously, Jay, I've known you for 2 decades. That's like nearly half my life, and we met at Aston University where we both did an accounting degree. So, I guess the first question I want to ask you is, how come you picked accounting?
And honestly, I wish I knew the answer, but I think it happened. It wasn't something that I dreamt of as a kid. I wasn't like, oh, I really want to be an accountant when I grow up. But it's just I didn't know any better. I think growing up, you don't really have any career advisors, not that I recall anyway, and you kind of just follow what your parents talk about or people you see in your community. And yeah, I knew accountants, I knew doctors, I knew lawyers, kind of just what I fell into. I ended up choosing accounting at A level and then sticking to it and went and studied it at university and then after university as well.
That sounds very similar to me because I did accounting at A level as well. And especially with sort of Indians that have immigrated from whether it's India or Kenya, there's that real kind of these career routes being mapped out because of that
Mm,
security element, right? Like you enter these
yeah.
professions, there's going to be an element of security around it. And I totally resonate with that because growing up in an Indian household, there were certain career routes that were almost like these are the ones you should do. But it's nice that nowadays more creative career options are available.
Mm.
Like I'm podcasting now. Who would have thought that that would be something that I would do? But I guess sticking with the idea of coming from an Indian household, were there any sort of expectations that were put upon you, whether it's, personal expectations or expectations of your career, as we've just been speaking about?
Yeah, I mean, definitely career-wise, I think my parents would have expected the traditional, okay, well, she's going to study, she's going to go to college, she's going to go to university, she'll be either a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant. That's what they knew. They didn't know any better, and they came to this country with nothing, and they wanted better for their children, as I'm sure everyone in that generation would have been feeling the same, and they wanted that stability of, okay, well, they'll go down a decent career path where they can earn some money and do well for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Jay, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I think you've done fantastically in your career. You've obviously opted to go down the route of contracting as well. And so I guess I just wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that. Firstly, could you just tell us what contracting actually is, but then also talk to us about some of the benefits and perhaps the challenges that come with being a contractor as well?
When I finished university, it was during the crisis, and I had done a placement year for an investment bank previously, and I ended up getting a contract role after I graduated with the same investment bank. And then I ended up going permanent with them. But after a little while, I just wanted the flexibility of, doing something else with my life where I thought, well, maybe I don't want to stick to the same bank. I see myself being a bit stagnant in the same role. Let me see what else is out there. And I started contracting. And it allows you the flexibility of you're working in theory for yourself. You are being paid by an employer, but at the time you were able to do it through a limited company. So there was more flexibility around when you're working. You can have contracts that are 6 months, a year, And then you can choose to stay with the same firm, or in my case, I've jumped from different banks to different banks, and it, it's good in the sense that you get that additional freedom of being able to leave when you're not enjoying something, and then you also have the freedom of not having to, play any games. There's nothing political about, oh well, you've got to be seen to be doing X, Y, Z, or you've got to be part of these work communities. There's no additional pressure, which is amazing. But I guess the downside as well is you don't necessarily have that career stability, or you might not get that career progression if you're not exposed to the right types of projects or the right type of people. And you also lose out on, nowadays, especially, it's more and more important as you get older. You want a decent pension, you want the healthcare side of things when you're permanent as well. So it has its pros and cons. And I think I'm probably at a stage now where I think I've been contracting for 15 years. If the right role came up, I think I would definitely jump at the chance of being permanent with a good firm, and yeah, in a good team. That would be ideal, really.
You've covered such a broad array of the benefits and I guess the cons, as you put it, that come with contracting. And during this time, whilst you've been contracting, have you been engaging in different roles or have the roles been very similar as well?
So I ended up falling into projects. So I'm a business analyst, where I guess it really depends the work on the project that I'm involved in. So whether it's in finance or regulatory change, and it varies from bank to bank. So you might have big projects that you end up working on for like a long period of time. So there have been times where I've been with the same firm for 3, 4 years. Whereas sometimes, when I move to another firm, it might only end up being a year in total. And yeah, it really varies on the project that you're working on. And the biggest difference is always the people that you work with. So you could be doing similar types of roles, but yeah, the people make the difference.
Something else I just want to touch on, given that you've mentioned you've moved around, is it sometimes, I don't want to use the word scary, but obviously, whenever you move to a new organization, there's often that kind of onboarding where you're getting comfortable
Mm.
with the processes, people, and the work that you're doing. I guess with contracting, there's a bit more of that depending on how long your contract is. So, how do you find that period of when you're starting with a new bank or you're having to meet new people or make new relations, almost start from scratch? Does it feel like you're having to do that a lot more when you're contracting?
Yeah, definitely, especially if you're moving bank to bank. And I'm not necessarily known people when I've moved into a new bank. And there is that element of, well, there's a bit of imposter syndrome as well. It's a new role. Am I really ready for this role? Am I fit for this type of project? All those kind of questions go through your mind. And also, well, the people that I'm working with, am I going to get along with them? You see them from 9 to 5 typically every day. They're the people that you spend the most amount of your time with, so you want to be able to get along with everyone that you work with and you come across. So there is that fear element of, well, is this right for me? Is this going to work out for me? And generally, it has worked out, so I've been quite lucky in that sense.
Can you also mention that with contracting, you don't have to worry about some of the political stuff that happens within corporates as well? Because as you say, you're not really a full-time normal employee in that sense. And
Yeah.
that definitely does seem like a great perk.
Mm.
You also mentioned that given you've been doing this for a little while, if the right opportunity came up, you would consider going into full-time employment. Has there been a specific moment through your career where you were like, damn it, I just wish I was employed full time?
There have been a couple of times recently now, and that's because previously we were able to do this through, your own limited company, whereas now everything is PAYE, your tax at source. So the money side of it is not necessarily as lucrative, but also, like I said, as you get older, you think a bit more about, well, I want a decent pension pot. I want the healthcare benefits that all the other perm employees are getting. You want the holidays, the extra days that you get off for, summer or your birthday, or if you're moving. There's great perks for when you are permanent. So I definitely miss out on that side of things. And yeah, that definitely is something that now I consider would be something that's more important than being able to have that flexibility, I guess.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say there is that security, right? Just that stability
Mm,
and that security that comes with full-time employment. Now, I know that recently you've also invested in a gym business. So, can you tell us a little
yeah.
bit about what made you want to invest in a gym? But more importantly, are you a gym goer yourself?
Yeah, I think if I owned a gym and didn't go to the gym, it'd be pretty sad. Not a great spokesperson for getting other people to come to the gym. Yeah, myself and my brother-in-law, both of us, we were contracting at the time, and during COVID, we had looked into, well, what can we do with some of the money that we saved up in our companies. We looked at the typical real estate side and thought, oh, could we buy a house potentially and just rent it out? And I think both of us thought that seemed a bit too boring. We wanted something a bit more exciting. So we started down around a route of, well, what kind of business ideas do we have? And we looked at franchises purely because we wanted the additional help, like the guidance of a franchise. And we looked at restaurants. We looked at weird things like kitchen worktops, any kind of business idea you think of, there's probably a franchise out there. And we ended up settling on gyms purely because we were training at the time. It was something we were interested in, and we thought it'd be a good like investment and something that we'd be passionate about. There's gyms everywhere. Everyone thinks about fitness at some point in their life and wants to go to the gym or wants to start out. And we thought, well, this seems like it could be a good business idea. And we started looking at different franchises, and we found something called Anytime Fitness, and we decided to go along with them and found like a site within Alperton, which is now near where we live as well. And we thought, okay, well, this is great. There's a landlord that's building new buildings, and there's blocks of flats coming up, and will be a gym within their site. And that was going to take a few years. So in between, we ended up actually purchasing a gym from franchisees that were looking to leave. They'd had a gym for 10 years within King's Cross. And so that was the gym that we actually first purchased. And that was a huge learning curve for us because it was especially during COVID times, that was a failing business. And it's a very small gym, and you have to learn very quickly that, that anything can go wrong with businesses. And if there's plumbing issues, you're having to go over there on a weekend when people can't get into the gym. If there's issues with your doors or staff issues, anything can come up. But it's stressful at times, but it's also fulfilling when it works out. So yeah, it's been a good endeavor.
That sounds amazing. Firstly, for even taking the step to venture into becoming a business owner, I feel like my husband and I, we often sit at the dinner table and we talk about all sorts of weird and wonderful business ideas. And it's that execution piece that can be the challenge. But you and your brother-in-law actually
Mm,
took that leap and went ahead. And I wanted to just touch on that piece about going into business with someone that's your family member. For some people, that
mm.
works out wonderfully, but for others, it doesn't. And you mentioned you obviously set this up or went into business with your brother in law during COVID, which was a weird time for a lot of us. How has the experience being a business owner with your brother in law been?
To be honest, it's actually been pretty smooth sailing. We get along quite well, and I think both of us have this fear of, oh, we might not be doing enough. So we're always trying our best to make sure the other's not having to pick up most of the slack. And there's a lot of 50-50 between us. Like there might be times where I've done a little bit more than he has, and then there are times where he's doing a little bit more than I am. But we're very obviously conscious of not putting all the pressure or all the stress on one person. So in that sense, we've been quite lucky. And we're both quite honest and open with each other. If we're annoying each other, if one of us isn't doing or pulling their own weight, then we'll just be like, oh, can you do X, Y, Z, and we do it straight away. So no, it's been good.
What I'm hearing you say there is that you guys have a great working relationship, and that communication and that transparency between you both
Hmm.
seems evident. The other thing I wanted to touch on is obviously you mentioned, gyms during COVID, potentially risky because a lot of gyms weren't open, during lockdowns
Hmm.
and what have you. But there has been such a shift in society around the importance of exercise and, going to the gym as an essential part for your mental well-being. Do you find that when you go to the gym, it kind of helps lift your mood?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's this whole craze over, like, you can't open your Instagram without seeing people promoting some sort of fitness, some sort of exercise. And a lot of people are now more body conscious as well, not just physically how they look, but what they're putting inside their bodies in terms of nutrition. So it is definitely something that's important, and I'm obviously all for people going to the gym because it helps us out as well. If you have a good if you have a good routine, it makes the world of a difference. If you've trained in the morning, or if you know you're training in the evening, feels like a sense of accomplishment after you've done it. It's not always easy to get yourself out there and do something, but once you do it, I think everyone feels that sense of achievement.
Do you and your brother-in-law gym together?
We have gym together, but he's a boy and he trains differently to the way I train. So boys are all about, training their chest. So girls less so. But yeah, no, he trains with a gym partner. So yeah, we tend not to train together.
In terms of the next set of questions I want to ask you, it's around this idea of success. Now, looking at your story, Jaymini, you've done wonderfully career wise, you're also a business owner. One would deem that as, yes, being successful. But I want to ask you, how do you define success?
I think if you had asked me this question maybe 20 years ago when I was at university or something, I'd have a very different answer to what I think success is now. So if you asked me years ago, I would have thought it meant something like, oh well, how much money am I earning? Have I got a house? What's my house like? How big is my house? What's my car like? It would have been based on material things. That's what I would have thought success was. But actually, now that I'm in a very fortunate position where I do have a decent career, I have a business, I have my own home, and I don't think of any of those things as success, to be honest. And I know people will look at me potentially and say, "Oh, she's driven, she's got a career, she's got a business," but I don't see it as anything now that I've achieved it. What success means to me is actually, the way I am as a person, who I am as a person, the relationships that I have with my family, the relationships I have with my friends, that's way more important. And if someone was to turn around and, if my parents turned around and said, oh, we're proud of our daughter, or if my sister said, she's a great sister, or my friends are like, oh, she's a loyal friend, that to me is what I see as success, not anything material.
That is so beautifully put, Jamie. And I think for a lot of people that are younger, they do have such a narrow tunnel vision and idea of
Mm,
success, right? And I so echo what you talk about when you refer to success as being the traditional, oh, how much am I earning? How big is my house?
mm,
Both my husband and I, over the years, we've learned to realize that actually that isn't success. And now our barometer for success really has changed. And I love how you've referred to it's the people around you and your relationships that help you identify whether you are successful, because you're talking about you as a person and your characteristics
mm.
and what you kind of bring to the table, to the relationships that you have. So that is so very beautifully put. Now, I'm thinking about the Indian community that you and I are part of, and obviously we're both going to be 40 soon. And it's undeniable that we have certain societal pressures that are put upon us, especially as a woman. Obviously you're single as well, and being single in your 40s sometimes comes with certain stigmas. How do you navigate that narrative?
I think, I'd be lying if I said I hadn't felt the pressure over the years. You do hear it a lot, especially within our own community. You'll hear the aunties, or even your friends, family. You'll hear that question a lot of, oh, well, why are you single? Why haven't you found someone? Why don't you go and find somebody? And sometimes it comes across as though, well, what's wrong with you? Why have you not settled down yet? But generally, I think I'm in a lucky position where I think I'm fairly strong-willed and have always been resilient to some of those questions, and thought to myself, actually, if I'm if I'm happy being single, and if I was to meet someone, then that person has to make me equally as happy, or if not happier. It shouldn't be a case of you're trying to fix something in me that might be lacking, because that's not the case, right? Like, if you're single, you should be able to be happy, and if you're with somebody, they should also make you happy. And it doesn't matter if if you haven't found someone yet. It may not happen for a while. It may happen later in life, or the timing happens when it happens. It's not a case of there shouldn't be that desperation.
So I've obviously been with my husband for 17 years. And so I've not been in the dating game for a very, very long time. But I know, speaking with friends and family, that dating experience can also bring about challenges, especially now with online dating. So I just wanted your views on, online dating. Has that made things easier or harder?
I definitely think it's made things harder. It's, you know, back in the day, you could meet people organically, and I would say the pool of people you're meeting, it's like a small pond of people. Whereas now it's a huge ocean, and that means that people have a lot more choice and there's a lot of variety out there. So what you tend to see is you might be having a conversation with one person, it could be a conversation that lasts a couple of days, and then 5 minutes later you're moving on to the next person, just because one little thing might have been said and you think, oh, that doesn't sit right with me, I'm just going to move on and speak to the next person. And it works with the actual dates themselves, right? Yeah, the number of first dates I've had is probably ridiculous because you'll go on dates, and I'm guilty of it as well, where I might end up dismissing someone just based on first impressions. And you try not to be judgy, but first impressions always count as well. And you think, oh well, actually, I could just go back to whatever dating site you're using, and you think, I'll carry on swiping, and I might meet somebody else, and they might tick these boxes potentially, or they might make me feel this way, or whatever it is. I think people have a lot more choice now, and therefore it's not that you become fussier, but I think people make less of an effort occasionally.
It's that abundance of choice, right? Psychologists often say too much choice results in decision fatigue, and therefore, you're almost so confused, and you always think the grass is greener on the other side. And although I can't speak to the experiences of online dating, I know people that have, and they often do talk about very much the challenges that you've described.
The one good thing about online dating is you meet people from different walks of life. Have completely different backgrounds, completely different experiences in life. So you end up seeing things that you probably wouldn't have seen, and you meet people that have had incredibly colorful lives, and as a result they are obviously different to what you've experienced. So that is a good thing about online dating. You wouldn't necessarily meet those same people. So I've met people where they'll talk about like crystals and healing, or people that have worked at strip joints.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I've met a sand sculptor. It's very different.
What's always fascinated me, and I think I might have mentioned this to you before, Jay, the concept of speed dating. And I've never been to a speed dating event either, but it just seems quite fascinating how, and I don't know how long the timers are set, but as I understand it, with speed dating, you kind of speak to someone for a couple of minutes and then you sort of move on. It just fascinates me how people would introduce themselves. And I guess just to kind of wrap up on this particular topic, have there been moments where you felt the need to conform? I think earlier you mentioned that you'd be lying if you didn't say you felt the pressure at times, but has there been a specific moment where you really felt that pressure?
Yeah, I guess with like weddings, you feel it a bit more where you think, oh, it would be nice to have a plus one. Or sometimes, when people are having children as well, it's like, well, I'm still single. I'm not married. I'm not, looking to have a child anytime soon. Whereas, some of my friends are popping out multiple babies. My sister has, had 3 kids now. So at times, there can be that pressure, but I try not to think of it as, oh, well, I should be doing exactly the same thing. I just try and think, I'm on a different path to some other people. It's my path, and it'll lead me to maybe something different. And everyone's past experiences make them who they are. And had I have gotten married in my 20s and had kids, and then my life would be completely different to what it is now. That doesn't necessarily mean I would be happier, or that I'm any less happy now. It's just a different path.
I love the fact that you've referenced this is the journey and the trajectory you're on, and it's different to your sisters or your friends who are popping out multiple babies.
Mm,
And I absolutely echo that sentiment. Everyone's journey is unique, and that's what I'm hoping to achieve through this podcast, that people can talk about the different journeys they have and realize that actually not everyone's trajectory is going to be the same. So thanks for sharing that. What has your journey taught you about your self-worth and self-discovery?
I think I've been quite lucky, like growing up in a very loving family environment. I had parents that doted on me. I never had that feeling of, oh, I'm not enough, or, I had friends that were good to me. I've had partners that were amazing to me. Obviously, there are moments where you might be a little bit insecure, but generally, I have been lucky with the people that have been around me and how loved I have felt and how privileged I have felt growing up. So I am, someone who's pretty resilient, someone who's pretty strong-willed, and have definitely tried to, go after what it is that I want.
I really admire that about you, Jaymini, and you've always been someone who has demonstrated such resilience, and that doesn't go unnoticed, certainly having been your friend for a very long time. For women, especially in cultures where marriage is an essential milestone on their life trajectory, what advice would you give to them about embracing life on their own terms?
I think for me, what's worked is just trying to find happiness within myself first, and looking around and, realizing how privileged we are in so many ways as it is. I am generally someone who is glass half full kind of person. And I think that's very important. If you're looking for a relationship and you're looking for it for the wrong reasons, where you think that person is going to fix you or that person is going to make you happy, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody else. And inevitably, it's not going to work, because somebody else is not going to fix you. Somebody else is not going to be the reason that you're happy. I think that truly you're only really going to find that happiness in yourself. If you love yourself, if you, try and be a better person for yourself rather than for somebody else. And if you're single, you shouldn't need somebody else to fulfill any voids that you believe are there in your life. It should be a case of that person adds value to your life, not something that needs fixing in you. So I think if someone's single and they feel the pressure, it should be a case of, learn to look at things in a positive light if you can, and just believe and be optimistic that things will come to you, because generally when you're not looking for things, when you're not desperately trying to find something, that's when it comes around for you.
I really love the advice of trying to think things through positively. And you mentioned gratitude, which is such an important practice. Not enough people think about the things that they do have in their life, which they should be grateful for. And it's okay to be single and to live life in your own terms, but you've got to learn to accept yourself first. Now, I ask my guests the final question, and I'll ask you, what journey are you on right now?
I think right now I'm just, the gyms are keeping me busy. Work is keeping me busy. I have three nieces and a new one that's just two months old. So yeah, life in general is very busy. But I'm trying to, I'm just trying to make the most of, seeing the people that I love, seeing the people that I care about, and making sure I enjoy every step of the way, really.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me on this conversation, Jaymini.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Journeys with Krutika. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and share. I'd love for you to hit the follow button wherever you get your podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a journey that you want to share, email me at journeyswithkrutika@gmail.com or reach out via my socials. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. Just search Journeys with Krutika, because your journey is extraordinary.